A Delta Force K9 handler watches in horror as his highly trained military dog refuses a direct command for the first time in 7 years. The dog is barking frantically at a small girl standing alone in a crowded airport terminal. Protocol says ignore it. Training says move on. But the dog won't stop. He's pulling so hard the leash cuts into his handler's palm. Every instinct the handler has says this is wrong. The girl looks fine. She's calm. She's smiling. But the dog knows something no human can see. And by the time they figure out what it is, 3 people will be dead, an entire city will be on lockdown, and that little girl will vanish into thin air. Because what that dog detected wasn't a threat to the girl was the threat. Before we go any further, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story grips you, if it makes you realize how much we miss when we're not paying attention, hit that subscribe button. The fluorescent lights of Denver International Airport's Terminal C hummed with their usual sterile brightness, casting everything in that particular shade of artificial daylight that exists nowhere else in nature. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September, and the terminal was packed with the usual chaos of American air travel. Business travelers in rumpled suits clutched roller bags through security lines. Families with screaming toddlers juggled strollers and diaper bags. College kids with oversized backpacks sprawled across gate seating, faces buried in phones. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole moved through this chaos like a shark through shallow water, calm, purposeful, aware of everything. He was 34 years old, built like a middleweight fighter, all lean muscle and coiled energy. His dark hair was cut high and tight, military standard, and his eyes, a pale gray that seemed to register everything in his field of vision simultaneously, constantly scanned the crowd. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a dark jacket, but everything about his posture screamed operator. You could spot it if you knew what to look for. The way he moved, the way he positioned himself with walls to his back and exits in his sightline, the way his hand never strayed far from his waistband. But it wasn't Marcus that people noticed. It was the dog. Havoc was a Belgian Malinois, 90 pounds of pure muscle, fur the color of burnt caramel with a black mask that made his amber eyes look like they were staring into your soul. He moved at Marcus's left side, no leash, because he didn't need one. 7 years of training, 7 years of missions in places whose names would never appear in any official report. 7 years of perfect obedience, perfect partnership, perfect trust. They'd pulled bodies from rubble in Syria. They'd cleared compounds in Afghanistan. They'd tracked high-value targets through urban sprawl and desert waste. Havoc had saved Marcus's life 4 times by official count, more if you counted the near misses that never made it into after-action reports, and Marcus had carried Havoc 17 miles through hostile territory after the dog took shrapnel meant for him. They weren't Handler and K9. They were brothers. Their mission today was simple, laughably simple compared to their usual work. They were in transit from Fort Bragg to a training facility in Colorado Springs. A routine transfer, a glorified taxi ride. They had a 3-hour layover in Denver, and Marcus had planned to grab food, let Havoc stretch his legs in the airport's pet relief area, and catch their connecting flight at 6:15. Easy day. Marcus had just cleared the security checkpoint, showing his military ID and Havoc's certification papers to a bored TSA agent who waved them through without a second glance. He was heading toward the food court, already thinking about whether he wanted Chipotle or Panda Express, when it happened. Havoc stopped. Just stopped. Mid-stride, like he'd hit an invisible wall. Marcus felt it instantly. The change. The tension that suddenly vibrated through the dog's body like an electric current. He looked down. Havoc's ears were forward, rigid. His tail was straight out, not wagging, not relaxed. And his eyes, those sharp amber eyes, were locked onto something across the terminal. Havoc, Marcus said quietly, his hand dropping to rest on the dog's head. What is it, boy? The dog didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge the command. And that, right there, was the first alarm bell, because Havoc always responded. Always. It was drilled into him at a cellular level. Marcus followed the dog's gaze across the crowded terminal. Gate C31. About 60 yards away, a cluster of passengers waiting to board. Business travelers, tourists, the usual mix. And then he saw her. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, 9 at most. She was standing near the gate counter with a woman, presumably her mother. The girl was small, delicate-looking, with dark hair pulled into 2 neat braids. She wore a pink backpack with unicorns on it, jeans, and a purple hoodie. She looked completely, utterly normal. Just another kid on just another flight, with just another parent. But Havoc was staring at her like she was enemy combatant number 1. And then the dog did something Marcus had never, ever seen him do in 7 years of service. Havoc barked. Not a warning bark. Not an alert bark. A full-throated, desperate, frantic bark that echoed across the terminal and made every head within 30 yards turn in their direction. The dog lunged forward, stopped only by Marcus's firm grip on his collar. He was pulling so hard that Marcus had to brace himself, his boots sliding slightly on the polished floor. "Havoc, heel," Marcus commanded, his voice sharp and clear. It was the voice that had stopped the dog mid-attack a dozen times in combat. The voice that meant life or death in the field. Havoc ignored it completely. He barked again, a sound of pure urgency, and kept pulling toward the little girl. People were staring now. A woman with a baby clutched her child closer and moved away. A businessman backed up, nearly tripping over his own luggage. The little girl turned, drawn by the commotion, and her eyes met Havoc's across the terminal. She smiled, a sweet, innocent smile, the kind of smile that belongs on school photos and birthday parties. Then she turned back to the woman beside her, completely unconcerned. Marcus's mind was racing. This made no sense. Havoc was a multi-purpose K9, trained in explosives detection, patrol, apprehension, and search and rescue. If he was alerting, it meant he detected something specific, something dangerous. But the girl looked fine, more than fine. She looked bored, like any kid stuck in an airport. The woman with her, mid-30s, brown hair, unremarkable features, wearing yoga pants and a fleece jacket, was scrolling through her phone, paying zero attention to the barking dog across the terminal. Marcus forced himself to analyze the situation tactically. What could Havoc be detecting? Explosives? Impossible. The girl and the woman had already cleared security. Every bag, every person, screened and cleared. Weapon? Same problem. No way to get a weapon through TSA, especially not on a child. So what was it? Havoc barked again, and this time there was something in the sound that Marcus had never heard before. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't the bark he used when he'd located an IED or cornered a target. This was different. This was desperation. Fear, even. The dog was terrified. "Sir, is there a problem?" A voice behind him, sharp and official. Marcus turned to see 2 airport security officers approaching, hands resting on their belts, eyes wary. The younger one, barely 25, had his hand near his radio. The older one, a barrel-chested man with a grey mustache, looked like he'd seen enough airport drama to last 3 lifetimes. "My K9 is alerting," Marcus said evenly, his voice calm despite the adrenaline starting to pump through his system. "I need you to isolate that gate, C31. Don't let anyone board." The older security officer looked at Havoc, then at the gate, then back at Marcus. Alerting to what, exactly? Those passengers already cleared security. "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted, "but my dog doesn't false alert. Ever. Something is wrong." "Sir, with all due respect, your dog is barking at a little kid," the younger officer said, his tone hovering somewhere between skeptical and annoyed. "We can't shut down a gate because a dog got excited." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. This was the problem with civilian security. They didn't understand. They'd never been downrange. They'd never bet their lives on a dog's nose and been proven right every single time. "This dog has a 98% accuracy rate in threat detection," Marcus said, keeping his voice level. "He's been deployed in 7 combat zones. He's identified over 30 IEDs. He's never, not once, alerted without cause. So when he tells me something is wrong, something is wrong." The older officer frowned, chewing on this. "What's your unit? Soldier?" "First SFOD, Marcus said quietly. "Delta Force." The designation meant something to people who knew. The older officer's eyes widened slightly. "Jesus," he muttered. Then, louder, to his partner, "Get on the radio. Tell them we have a possible security situation at C31. No panic, just hold the boarding." The younger officer hesitated, then complied, speaking quietly into his shoulder mic. Marcus looked back at the gate. The woman with the little girl was now at the counter, handing over boarding passes. The gate agent, a tired-looking woman with glasses, was scanning them. Everything looked normal, routine, safe. Havoc was now whining, a high-pitched sound of pure distress, still straining against Marcus's grip. And that's when Marcus made a decision. The decision, the one that would change everything. He'd spent his entire adult life learning to trust his training, trust the system, trust the protocols. But he'd also spent that entire life learning to trust this dog. And right now, those two things were in direct conflict. Protocol said the girl was cleared. The system said she was safe. Common sense said she was just a kid with a unicorn backpack. But Havoc said different. Marcus chose the dog. "Stay with me," he told the security officers, and started walking toward gate C31, Havoc straining at his side, every muscle in the dog's body coiled tight. They crossed the terminal, weaving through travelers who parted like water around them. Nobody wanted to get close to the intense-looking man with the intense-looking dog who was clearly on a mission. As they approached, Marcus studied the woman and the girl more carefully. The woman first. Brown hair, average height, average build. No visible jewelry except a simple watch, minimal makeup, clothes that were neither expensive nor cheap. She looked like any of the 1,000 soccer moms you'd see in any airport in America. But something was off. Marcus couldn't pinpoint it, but something in her posture, something in the way she held herself, was wrong. She wasn't relaxed. She was controlled. There's a difference, subtle but real. Relaxed people slouch. They fidget. They react naturally to their environment. This woman was managing herself, consciously maintaining a persona of casualness that didn't quite reach her eyes. The girl was different. She genuinely looked calm, content, even. She was humming something, a tune Marcus couldn't quite make out, and swinging her unicorn backpack by one strap. They were 10 feet away when the woman noticed them. Her eyes flicked up, registered Marcus, then Havoc, then the security officers behind them, and for just a microsecond, a fraction of a heartbeat, Marcus saw something flash across her face. Not surprise, not confusion, recognition, and calculation. Then it was gone, replaced by a perfectly calibrated expression of polite concern. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice pleasant, with just a hint of nervousness that any normal person would have when approached by authorities. It was textbook, too textbook. Marcus stepped closer, and Havoc immediately focused on the little girl, his nose working, his whole body quivering. "Ma'am, I'm Staff Sergeant Cole, U.S. Army. This is my K9, Havoc. He's alerting to your daughter. I need you to step away from the gate." The woman blinked, and her hand moved to rest on the girl's shoulder, a protective gesture, maternal. "I'm sorry, what? Your dog is alerting? I don't understand." "Mom, what's wrong?" the little girl asked, looking up at the woman with wide, innocent eyes. "It's okay, sweetie," the woman said softly. Then, to Marcus, with a nervous laugh, "Officer, I think there's been some kind of mistake. We already went through security. They checked everything." "I understand that, ma'am," Marcus said, "but I still need you to step aside. We need to verify a few things." "Verify what?" The woman's voice had an edge now. "You're scaring my daughter." The little girl didn't look scared. She was watching Havoc with curiosity, her head tilted slightly to one side. "Your name?" "Ma'am," the older security officer said, pulling out a tablet. "Jennifer Walsh," the woman said. "This is my daughter, Emma. We're flying to San Diego to visit my mother. This is ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong." Marcus watched Havoc. The dog was fixated on the girl's backpack. Not the girl herself, the backpack. His nose was working overtime, and his tail was rigid, his posture screaming that he'd found something. "Emma, can I see your backpack?" Marcus asked gently, crouching down to the girl's eye level. "No," the woman said sharply, stepping between them. "You can't. You have no right to search us. We already cleared security. This is harassment." "Ma'am, I'm asking nicely," Marcus said, standing back up, his voice still calm but with steel underneath. "Don't make this difficult." "I want to speak to a supervisor," the woman demanded. "This is outrageous. You're profiling us because my dog, who has never been wrong, is telling me that something is very wrong with your daughter's backpack." Marcus interrupted. "Now, you can cooperate, or these officers can detain you while we sort this out. Your choice." For a moment, nobody moved. The terminal's background noise, The announcements, the conversations, the rolling of luggage, all seemed to fade. It was just Marcus and the woman, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then the little girl spoke. Her voice was soft, almost dreamy. "Can I pet your dog?" Everyone looked down at her. She was smiling up at Marcus, completely unconcerned with the tension crackling in the air around her. "Maybe in a minute, sweetheart," Marcus said carefully. "First I need to look at your backpack. Is that okay?" "Emma, don't say anything," the woman said quickly. And there it was, the crack. Because what innocent parent tells their child not to cooperate with authorities over a simple backpack check? The older security officer caught it too. His hand moved to his radio. "I need additional units at gate C31. Possible situation." The woman's eyes darted toward the terminal's exit corridors. Measuring distances, calculating escape routes. Marcus saw it. He'd seen that look before, in compounds in Kandahar, in alleyways in Baghdad. It was the look of someone planning to run. "Don't," Marcus said quietly, his hand moving to rest on Havoc's back. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. "You run, the dog runs faster." The woman's jaw clenched. Then she looked down at the little girl and said something that made Marcus's blood turn to ice. "Emma, show them." The little girl nodded, still smiling that strange, serene smile. She swung the unicorn backpack off her shoulders, unzipped it, and reached inside. Havoc went ballistic, barking and lunging, and Marcus had to use both hands to hold him back. The security officers stepped back instinctively, hands going to their weapons. "Slowly," Marcus commanded. "Whatever you're reaching for, do it slowly." The girl pulled her hand out. She was holding a small stuffed animal, a pink unicorn, matching the ones on her backpack. But Havoc was still barking, still alerting. Because it wasn't about the unicorn, Marcus looked closer. The stuffed animal was old, worn, clearly well loved. But there was something wrong with it. The stitching along its belly was newer, cleaner than the rest. Recent. "Put it down," Marcus said. "Put it on the ground and step back." The girl did, carefully placing the unicorn on the terminal floor. Then she stepped back, taking the woman's hand. Marcus released Havoc with a single command. "Check." The dog surged forward, nose to the ground, circling the stuffed animal. Then he sat, the formal alert position, the one that meant target acquired. The older security officer's face went white. "Oh Jesus! What is that?" Marcus knelt, pulling a multi-tool from his pocket. He carefully turned the stuffed unicorn over, examining the new stitching. Then, with the precision of someone who'd disarmed more IEDs than he could count, he made a small incision in the fabric. White powder spilled onto the floor. "A lot of it. Fentanyl," Marcus said quietly, his voice tight. "Or something similar. Enough to kill half this terminal if it became airborne." The woman ran. She just bolted, dropping the little girl's hand and sprinting toward the terminal exit with the speed and efficiency of someone who'd planned exactly this scenario. The younger security officer lunged for her but missed, sprawling on the floor. "Stop her!" Marcus yelled, but she was already gone, disappearing into the crowd. The older officer was on his radio, his voice sharp and urgent. "Security breach, Terminal C, suspect fleeing west toward baggage claim, white female, brown hair, fleece jacket." Marcus didn't wait to hear the rest. He turned to the little girl, who was still standing there, watching everything with that same calm, distant expression. "Emma," Marcus said gently, kneeling in front of her. "Where is your real mom?" The girl blinked, tilted her head, and said, in that soft, dreamy voice, "I don't have a mom, I have a purpose." And that's when Marcus understood. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't trafficking. This was something worse. Something calculated and cold, and absolutely terrifying. The little girl wasn't a victim being transported. She was the weapon being delivered. And the woman who'd just run wasn't her captor. She was her handler. The next 6 minutes unfolded in a blur of controlled chaos that Marcus would replay in his mind for years afterward, dissecting every decision, every hesitation, every fraction of a second that might have changed what came next. Airport police arrived first, flooding Gate C31 with a wall of uniforms and drawn weapons. Behind them came TSA supervisors, their faces pale with the kind of terror that comes from realizing your security protocols just failed catastrophically. The terminal was evacuated. Passengers herded away from the gate with their hands visible, confusion and fear rippling through the crowd like a shockwave. Marcus kept Havoc close, and the little girl closer. Emma, if that was even her real name, sat on a bench with her legs swinging, humming that same tune, completely unbothered by the armed officers surrounding her. She looked at Marcus with those big, dark eyes and smiled. "Your dog is really pretty," she said. "What's his name?" "Havoc," Marcus replied, studying her face for any sign of distress, any indication that she understood the magnitude of what was happening. There was nothing. Just that serene, disconnected calm that made his skin crawl. "That's a scary name," she said thoughtfully. "But he doesn't seem scary. He seems nice." Before Marcus could respond, a new voice cut through the chaos. Sharp, female, carrying the kind of authority that makes even armed officers step aside. "Clear a path. FBI, move." The crowd parted, and Marcus saw her. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI Denver Field Office, striding toward them like she owned the terminal. She was in her early 40s, short, dark hair, sharp features, wearing a dark suit that somehow looked fresh, despite the fact that she'd clearly sprinted from wherever she'd been when the call came in. Her badge was clipped to her belt, her sidearm visible under her jacket, and her eyes were already cataloging every detail of the scene. Two more agents flanked her, both male, both radiating that particular federal energy that comes from too many years dealing with the worst humanity has to offer. Torres stopped in front of Marcus, gave him a quick once-over that registered his military bearing and Havoc's tactical vest in about 2 seconds, then shifted her focus to the little girl. "Staff Sergeant Cole," she asked, not waiting for confirmation. "I'm Special Agent Torres. Your dog found this?" She gestured to the stuffed unicorn, now carefully isolated inside a clear evidence bag held by a hazmat team that had appeared from somewhere. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus confirmed. Havoc alerted to the child's backpack. The woman with her, claimed name Jennifer Walsh, ran the moment we confirmed the presence of narcotics. "Jennifer Walsh," Torres repeated, pulling out a tablet and typing rapidly. "Description?" Marcus rattled off the details. Every physical characteristic he'd observed, every mannerism, the watch on her left wrist, the brand of her shoes, the way she'd moved when she ran. Torres listened, typing, her expression growing darker with each detail. "We've got her on security cameras," one of the other agents reported, holding up his own tablet. "Heading toward ground transportation, local PD is setting up a perimeter, but she had a 2-minute head start." Torres cursed under her breath, then crouched down in front of Emma, her voice softening slightly. "Hi, sweetie. My name is Rebecca. Can you tell me your real name?" Emma looked at her with those distant, dreamy eyes. "Emma. Okay, Emma. Can you tell me your last name?" "Walsh." "And the woman who was with you, who is she?" "My mom." Torres glanced up at Marcus, her expression grim. The girl was either coached to perfection, or something else was very, very wrong here. "Emma, where were you and your mom flying to?" "San Diego. To see my grandma." The answers were too smooth, too practiced. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, none of the natural stumbling that comes when a child is stressed or scared. It was like talking to a recording. Torres stood, motioning Marcus aside. "Your dog," she said quietly, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "What exactly is he trained to detect?" "Explosives primarily," Marcus replied. "But he's cross-trained in narcotics. We run dual purpose in the field." "Has he ever alerted to fentanyl specifically?" "Multiple times. Afghanistan, mostly. The Taliban was using it as a weapon, aerosolized in confined spaces. Havoc's saved my unit more than once." Torres nodded slowly, processing this. "The amount in that stuffed animal, according to our preliminary field test, is enough to kill approximately 300 people, if properly dispersed. Commercial airliners recirculate cabin air. If that backpack had made it onto that plane, if the seal on that unicorn had been compromised at altitude." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus felt his blood run cold. She was a delivery system. Or the backpack was, Torres corrected. "The question is whether the girl knows what she was carrying. Look at her. She's calm. Too calm. Kids don't act like this unless they're in shock, heavily medicated, or conditioned," Marcus finished. He'd seen it before, in other contexts, in other wars. Children used as weapons because nobody suspects children. "You think she's been programmed?" I think we need to find out who Jennifer Walsh really is, and I think we need to do it fast. Torres turned to one of her agents. Get me passenger manifests for every flight out of Denver in the last 24 hours with a Jennifer Walsh listed. Cross-reference with any Emma Walsh, traveling as a minor. And pull security footage from the last week. I want to know when they arrived, and from where. The agent nodded and moved off, already on his phone. Torres turned back to Marcus. Your K9, can he track? Best tracker in the unit. Marcus confirmed. Then I'm deputizing you. You and your dog are now working with the FBI until this situation is resolved. We need to find that woman, and we need to find her before she disappears. Marcus should have objected. He should have explained that he was in transit, that he had orders, that he needed to report to his command. But the truth was, the moment Havoc alerted to that little girl, the moment Marcus saw that powder spill from the stuffed unicorn, his orders had become irrelevant. This wasn't about duty anymore. This was about the fact that somewhere out there, a woman who'd tried to put 300 people in a flying coffin was running free. Where do we start? Marcus asked. Torres's tablet chimed. She glanced at it, and her expression went from grim to something darker. We start with this. Security footage just came back. Our Jennifer Walsh checked in at the American Airlines counter at 1:47 p.m. But here's the interesting part. She turned the tablet so Marcus could see the screen. It showed a timestamp and a frozen image of the woman, Emma's hand in hers, approaching the ticket counter. The woman's face was clearly visible, calm and confident. Now watch this, Torres said, swiping to a different video. This is the same woman, same terminal. 3 days ago, the footage showed the same woman walking through the terminal. Same build, same hair, same clothing style. But she was alone, no child, and she was moving differently. More purposeful, less maternal. She stopped at a coffee shop, and the camera caught her face in profile. It was the same woman, but also not. The bone structure was identical, but something about the expression, the way she held herself, was fundamentally different. That's not makeup, Marcus said slowly. That's training. She's military, or intelligence. That's what I thought, Torres agreed. So, I ran her face through our database. Facial recognition came back with 17 possible matches, but one stood out. She swiped again, pulling up a file. Meet Katrina Volkov, formerly of the GRU, Russian military intelligence, specialized in infiltration and chemical weapons deployment. She's been on our watch list for 2 years, suspected of operating in the U.S. under deep cover, but we've never been able to confirm her presence or identity until now. Marcus stared at the file photo. It was her, Jennifer Walsh, Katrina Volkov, the same woman, but in this photo, taken from some classified intelligence briefing, she looked hard, dangerous. This was no soccer mom. This was a professional. If she's GRU, Marcus said carefully, then this wasn't a random attack. This was planned, coordinated, which means she has support. Torres finished. Extraction protocols, safe houses, probably multiple identities prepared. She's already gone to ground, and finding her is going to be like finding a ghost. Not if Havoc can pick up her scent. Torres looked at the dog, then back at Marcus. How long can he track? Depends on conditions. But I've seen him follow a trail that was 4 days old through a sandstorm. If we can get him to where she was, where she spent time, he can find her. The ticket counter, Torres said immediately. She stood there for at least 3 minutes checking in. If your dog can pull her scent from that location, we can track her from there. They moved fast. Torres cleared the ticket counter area, evacuating staff and passengers, creating a sterile environment for Havoc to work. Marcus brought the dog to the exact spot where Katrina had stood, letting him sniff the floor, the counter, the air itself. Havoc's nose went to work immediately. That incredible organ that could detect scents in parts per trillion, that could distinguish between 1,000 different chemical signatures in a single breath. He circled the area once, twice, then his body language changed. He'd found something. He's got her, Marcus said. Let's move. What followed was the strangest manhunt Marcus had ever been part of. Havoc led them through the terminal, past evacuated gates, and confused security personnel, his nose to the ground, following a trail that was invisible to every human present, but blazingly clear to him. Torres and her agents followed, weapons drawn, ready for anything. The dog took them out of the terminal, through automatic doors into the bright Colorado afternoon, into the chaos of ground transportation. Cars, buses, taxis, shuttles, all moving in constant motion. The scent should have been impossible to track here, diluted by exhaust fumes and the movement of thousands of vehicles. But Havoc kept going. He led them to the rideshare pickup area, to a specific spot marked with a painted number 7. He sat, alert position. This was where she'd gotten into a vehicle. "We need rideshare logs," Torres snapped at one of her agents. "Every pickup from this location in the last hour. Uber, Lyft, all of them." The agent was already on it, phone to his ear, badge number being rattled off to whatever poor customer service representative had just gotten the call of their career. Marcus watched the road, the endless stream of cars, and felt the window closing. Every second that passed, Katrina got further away. Every mile she traveled made the scent trail harder to follow. They were losing her. "Got it," the agent said. "Lyft pickup, 34 p.m. Driver named Tyson Reed. Passenger listed as Jessica Williams. Destination 4700 block of Morrison Road." Torres was already moving, her hand keying her radio. "All units, we have a destination. 4700 Morrison Road. Suspect is armed and extremely dangerous. Approach with caution." They piled into 3 black SUVs, Marcus and Havoc in the lead vehicle with Torres driving. She drove like she'd done tactical pursuit training, which she probably had, weaving through traffic with lights flashing, but no siren. They didn't want to announce their approach. Morrison Road was in a rough part of Denver, the kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business and didn't call the cops even when they should. Run-down apartment buildings, chain-link fences, bars on windows. The perfect place to disappear. The Lyft driver, Tyson, was still in the area. They found him parked outside a gas station, filling up, completely unaware that he'd just transported one of the FBI's most wanted. He was a college kid, early 20s, with headphones in and the stressed look of someone working 3-gig jobs to pay rent. Torres badged him so fast, he nearly dropped his gas pump. "The woman you picked up at DIA, 40 minutes ago. Where exactly did you drop her off?" Tyson's eyes went wide. The address in the app, 4782 Morrison. It's an apartment building, kind of run down. She tipped me $20 in cash and said to have a good day. That's it. I swear, I didn't know. You didn't do anything wrong, Torres assured him. But I need you to stay here. Don't go anywhere. We'll need a statement. They left him there, pale and shaking, and drove the remaining 3 blocks with lights off. The building was exactly as described. 4 stories, brown brick, crumbling facade, graffiti on the ground floor walls. There were maybe 20 units total, and no way to know which one she was in. Torres had called for backup. Denver PD was staging 2 blocks away. SWAT was en route, and FBI's hostage rescue team was being scrambled from Quantico. But all of that would take time they didn't have. She knows we found the fentanyl, Marcus said quietly. The moment airport security hit their radios, she would have assumed we'd be coming. If she's as professional as her file suggests, she's already planning her next move. Either she's extracting right now, or she's destroying evidence, Torres finished. Which means, if we wait for SWAT, we get nothing but an empty apartment and maybe some bodies, if she decides to tie up loose ends. They looked at each other. Both knew what they were considering. It was the kind of decision that ended careers if it went wrong, and earned commendations if it went right. Go in now, fast and light, just the 2 of them, and maybe one more agent, or wait for proper backup and risk losing everything. Marcus made the decision for her. Havoc can clear the building faster than a full SWAT team. If she's here, he'll find her. If there are threats, he'll alert before we walk into them. We don't need 20 officers. We need 1 good dog. Torres looked at Havoc, then at Marcus. If this goes sideways, it won't. She nodded once, pulling her sidearm and checking the magazine. 3rd floor, southwest corner. That unit has the best sightlines for counter-surveillance. If I were hiding, that's where I'd be. They entered the building through a side door, the lock broken years ago and never repaired. The interior smelled like mildew, old cooking, and desperation. The stairwell was poorly lit, trash scattered on the steps. They moved up quietly. Marcus, in front with Havoc, Torres behind, her weapon up and ready. Second floor. Clear. Third floor. Clear. They reached the southwest corner unit, number 314, and Marcus hand-signaled Torres to hold position. He gave Havoc the silent command for threat assessment, and the dog pressed his nose to the crack under the door, sniffing, reading the story that the air told him. Havoc's ears went back. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Someone was inside. Multiple someones. And the dog's body language said they were a threat. Marcus looked back at Torres. She nodded, ready. He tried the doorknob. Locked. Of course. He stepped back, raised his boot, and kicked hard just below the lock. The door exploded inward, cheap wood splintering, and Marcus went through with Havoc at his side, and Torres right behind him. The apartment was small. A living room, a kitchenette, 2 doors leading to what were probably a bedroom and bathroom, and standing in the center of the living room, calm, as if she'd been expecting them, was Katrina Volkov. She wasn't alone. 2 men flanked her, both with the same hard professional look, both with their hands hovering near concealed weapons, and sitting on the couch, still wearing her purple hoodie and swinging her legs, was Emma. Staff Sergeant Cole, Katrina said, her accent slight but unmistakable now that she wasn't pretending to be Jennifer Walsh from suburban America. I must admit, I underestimated your dog. That was my mistake. I won't make it again. Hands where I can see them, Torres commanded, her weapon trained on Katrina's center mass. All of you. Now. We're all friends here, Katrina said smoothly, not moving. No need for weapons. You have what you came for. The fentanyl is secured. The plane is safe. Everyone wins. Except the 300 people you were planning to murder, Marcus said, his voice cold. FBI, Russian intelligence, it doesn't matter. You're done. Katrina smiled. It was a terrible smile. Am I? You have no idea what you've stumbled into, Sergeant. That fentanyl? It was never going to be used on a plane. It was a delivery. We were transporting it to buyers in San Diego. You've just cost some very dangerous people a very expensive shipment. They're going to want compensation. Is that a threat? Torres asked. It's a fact. Katrina's eyes shifted to Emma. The girl doesn't know anything. She's collateral from an unrelated operation. Return her to protective services. Forget you saw us here, and everyone walks away. Marcus watched Emma. The little girl was still humming, still swinging her legs, completely detached from the armed standoff happening around her. But something was wrong. Something about her posture, the way she was breathing. Havoc, Marcus said quietly. Check. The dog moved toward Emma. And that's when everything went to hell. One of the men went for his gun. Torres fired twice, center mass, dropping him instantly. The second man lunged at Marcus, and Havoc intercepted him mid-air. 90 pounds of trained fury hitting him like a missile and driving him to the ground. The man screamed as the dog's jaws clamped onto his arm. Katrina ran. Not toward the door, toward the bedroom. Torres went after her, and Marcus heard 2 more shots, a crash, then silence. Marcus secured the second man, zip-tying his wrists, while Havoc kept him pinned, then moved to the bedroom. Torres was standing over Katrina, who was on the floor, blood pooling from a shoulder wound. She'd tried to go through the window and had been stopped 1 bullet short of freedom. She'll live, Torres said grimly. Call it in. We need medical and transport. Marcus returned to the living room. Emma was still sitting there, still humming. He knelt in front of her. Emma, are you okay? She looked at him with those distant eyes. I feel sleepy. That's when Marcus saw it. The small adhesive patch on her neck, partially hidden by her hoodie. He pulled back the fabric, and his blood went cold. Torres, he yelled. Medical, now, she's drugged. The patch was a transdermal sedative delivery system, the kind used in hospitals for pain management. Someone had been keeping this little girl in a constant state of chemical compliance. For how long? Marcus couldn't tell. Days? Weeks? Months? Emma's eyes fluttered. Your dog is really pretty, she whispered. Then she passed out. The next 20 minutes were organized chaos. Paramedics arrived, stabilizing Emma and treating Katrina and the surviving man. Denver PD flooded the building, securing the scene. FBI evidence teams began photographing everything, cataloging the apartment's contents. Torres found Marcus on the street outside, sitting on the curb with Havoc beside him. The dog's head was resting on his knee, and Marcus was absently scratching behind his ears. The girl? Marcus asked. Alive. They're taking her to Denver Health. Doctors say the sedative patch was military grade, probably Russian. She's been under chemical control for at least a week, maybe longer. Once it clears her system, we'll be able to interview her properly. But Sergeant. Torres paused. We found identification in the apartment. Emma's real name is Sophia Martinez. She was reported missing from a foster home in Phoenix 3 months ago. She's been a ghost ever since. Marcus closed his eyes. 3 months. This little girl had been in the hands of Russian intelligence for 3 months. Drugged, controlled, used as a weapon. Katrina's talking, Torres continued. Trying to cut a deal. She says the operation was bigger than just one shipment. There are others. Other handlers, other children, other deliveries planned across the country. She'll give us names in exchange for immunity. Will you take the deal? Hell no, Torres said flatly. But I'll let her think I will until we get everything we need. Then she's going to prison for the rest of her life. Marcus looked at Havoc. The dog looked back at him with those intelligent amber eyes. He knew, Marcus said quietly. From the moment he saw her, he knew something was wrong. Not just the drugs in the backpack, he knew she was wrong. Torres nodded. Dogs can smell stress hormones, chemical imbalances, sedatives. Your Havoc didn't just find contraband, he found a victim. He saved her life. He saved 300 lives on that plane. That too. They sat in silence for a moment, watching as the scene continued to unfold around them. FBI agents, police officers, paramedics, all moving with purpose, all part of the machine that was supposed to keep people safe. What happens now? Marcus asked. Torres looked at him. Now we follow the leads Katrina gives us. We find the other handlers. We shut down the network, and we find the other children. She paused. I'm going to need your help with that, Sergeant. You and your dog. You're good at finding things that don't want to be found. Marcus should have said no. He should have explained, again, that he had orders, that he was due in Colorado Springs, that he couldn't just join the FBI on an indefinite manhunt. But he looked at Havoc, and he thought about a little girl named Sophia, who had been humming a tune to keep herself sane, while chemicals controlled her mind. How long? Marcus asked. As long as it takes. He nodded. Then we're in. The safe house was in the mountains west of Denver, a nondescript cabin hidden among ponderosa pines, where the FBI brought witnesses who needed to disappear for a while. It was here, 3 days after the airport incident, that Marcus and Agent Torres sat across from a little girl who was finally starting to remember who she was. Sophia Martinez looked different now. The chemical fog that had kept her docile and disconnected was lifting, burned away by her own metabolism and a medical team's careful intervention. Her eyes, those dark eyes that had seemed so distant and dreamy, now held something new, awareness. And with that awareness came fear. She sat in an oversized armchair, wrapped in a blanket, despite the fire crackling in the stone hearth. A child psychologist, Dr. Ellen Reese, sat beside her, a gentle presence with soft grey hair and a voice that could calm storms. Havoc lay at Sophia's feet, and every few minutes the girl would reach down to touch his fur, as if confirming he was real, confirming she was safe. Sophia, Dr. Reese said quietly, you don't have to talk about anything you're not ready to talk about. But Agent Torres and Sergeant Cole, they're trying to help other kids. Kids who might be in the same situation you were in. Anything you can remember might help them. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her small fingers twisted in the blanket. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin and fragile, nothing like the dreamy monotone from the airport. I don't remember everything, she whispered. There are holes. Like pieces of a dream that fade when you wake up. That's okay, Torres said gently. She'd changed since the airport, since the raid. The hard federal edge had softened slightly, replaced by something more human. Just tell us what you do remember. Sophia took a shaky breath. I was in a foster home in Phoenix. The Hendersons. They were nice. I had my own room. There was a dog, a golden retriever named Buddy. A small smile flickered across her face at the memory, then died. One day a lady came. She said she was from social services. She said there was a problem with my paperwork, that I had to go with her to fix it. Mrs. Henderson believed her. She had a badge and everything. Do you remember what the lady looked like? Marcus asked. Brown hair, nice face. She smiled a lot. Sophia's hands tightened on the blanket. But her smile was wrong. It didn't reach her eyes, Buddy knew. The dog? He barked at her. He never barked at people. But Mrs. Henderson told him to hush, and I got in the car with the lady. Torres exchanged a glance with Marcus. The woman from the foster home wasn't Katrina. They'd confirmed Katrina's whereabouts on the day Sophia disappeared. She'd been in Denver, which meant there were multiple operatives working this network, multiple handlers stealing children. What happened after you got in the car, Doctor? Reese prompted gently. We drove for a long time. Hours. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a different place. A house, I think. There were other people there. A man with an accent. Russian, maybe. He was the scary one. He didn't smile at all. Sophia's breathing quickened, her small chest rising and falling faster. Havoc lifted his head, sensing her distress, and nudged her hand with his nose. She latched onto his fur like a lifeline. It's okay, Dr. Reese soothed. You're safe now. He can't hurt you. He said I was going to help them, Sophia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He said I was going to take a trip on a plane, that I just had to carry my backpack and be a good girl. He said if I was good, I'd get to go home. If I wasn't good. She trailed off, her eyes going distant again. But not with drugs this time. With memory. With fear. They put the patch on my neck that first day, said it would help me stay calm. After that, everything got fuzzy, like I was watching myself from far away. I knew things were happening. I knew I was moving around, getting on planes, staying in different places. But it was like it was happening to someone else. Torres leaned forward slightly. Sophia, this is really important. Do you remember being on other planes before Denver? The girl's brow furrowed, concentrating. Yes. At least 2, maybe 3. Different airports. Different people picking me up, but always with a backpack. Always told to hold onto the backpack and not let anyone look inside. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Other backpacks? With the same thing inside? I don't know what was inside, Sophia said. But they always made me careful with them. Said I was carrying something very important, very special. Said I was helping people. Torres pulled out her tablet, pulling up a series of photographs. Sophia, I'm going to show you some pictures. Tell me if you recognize any of these people. She scrolled through slowly, images of faces, men and women of various ages and backgrounds. Sophia shook her head at most of them. Then she stopped. Him, she said, pointing. He was at one of the houses. He's the one who gave me the patch when the old one wore off. Torres looked at the photo. Dmitry Orlov, known GRU operative, suspected of running sleeper cells in the American Southwest. He'd been on the FBI's radar for years, but they'd never been able to build a prosecutable case. Now they had an eyewitness. 3 more faces. Sophia recognized 2 of them, more operatives, more pieces of the network. Then Torres pulled up a map. Can you tell me anything about where you were? What you saw outside windows? Street signs? Anything? Mountains, Sophia said. One place had mountains. And cactus. It was hot. Arizona, probably, Torres murmured, making notes. What else? One place smelled like the ocean, salty. There were seagulls. California, maybe, or the coast. They worked for another hour, pulling fragments of memory from the fog, piecing together a route, a network, a pattern. When Dr. Reese finally called a halt, saying Sophia needed rest, they had the beginnings of a map, at least 6 locations across 4 states, at least 8 operatives, and the terrifying probability that Sophia hadn't been the only child. That night, Marcus sat on the cabin's back porch with Havoc beside him, staring up at stars so bright they looked close enough to touch. The mountain air was cold and clean, but it didn't wash away the weight pressing on his chest. Torres joined him, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one and sat on the porch railing. You're thinking about the other children, she said. It wasn't a question. If Sophia was on 3, maybe 4 flights, carrying fentanyl each time, Marcus said slowly, then someone received those backpacks. Someone took delivery, which means, somewhere out there are multiple caches of military-grade narcotics, enough to kill thousands of people, in the hands of whoever's running this operation. We've been running the scenario models all day, Torres said grimly. If those drugs were meant for dispersal in confined spaces, Airports, subways, office buildings. We're looking at a potential casualty count in the tens of thousands. This wasn't just smuggling. This was preparation for mass casualty attacks. How many other kids? Torres took a long drink of her coffee before answering. We've cross-referenced missing children reports from the last 6 months with flight manifests. We found 7 possibles. 7 children who disappeared from foster care or troubled homes. Kids nobody was looking too hard for, and who showed up on flight manifests with adult companions who then disappeared from records. 7 children, drugged and controlled, and used as mules to transport weapons of mass destruction across the country. 7 Sophias. Are any of them still missing? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer from Torres's expression. 4 children are still unaccounted for. We don't know if they've already made their deliveries and been disposed of, or if they're still in play, still being moved around the network. Marcus looked at Havoc. The dog was resting, but even in sleep, his ears twitched, listening, ready. 7 years they'd been partners, 7 years of hunting bad guys in bad places, but this was different. This was home. And the enemy wasn't wearing a uniform or carrying an AK-47. The enemy looked like a suburban mom at an airport. We need to find them, Marcus said. It wasn't a statement, it was a vow. That's why I'm keeping you and Havoc on loan from the army, Torres replied. I've already cleared it with your command. They're not happy, but when I explained what we found, what we're dealing with, they agreed. You're officially assigned to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force until we shut this network down. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus and Havoc became ghosts themselves, moving through airports and bus stations and train terminals across the American West, hunting. They had Katrina Volkov's intelligence, extracted through careful interrogation. She'd given up names, addresses, communication protocols, everything she knew in a desperate bid for a deal she'd never get. The FBI struck hard and fast, rolling up safe houses in Phoenix and San Diego and Seattle. They found caches of fentanyl, enough to kill a small city. They found operational plans, target lists, dates circled on calendars. The scope of the plot was staggering. Coordinated attacks, planned for a dozen major cities, timed to create maximum chaos and fear. But they didn't find the children, not at first. The first break came in Salt Lake City. Havoc alerted at a Greyhound bus station the same desperate, frantic behavior he'd shown at Denver International. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, traveling with his aunt. The aunt ran. The boy was saved. His backpack contained enough carfentanil to kill 500 people. 2 days later, in Portland, another alert. A girl, 7 years old, same MO. Drugged, compliant, carrying death in a Paw Patrol backpack. Her handler was caught trying to flush her phone down a McDonald's toilet. They found 3 of the 4 missing children. 3 lives saved. 3 weapons disarmed. But the 4th remained missing. A boy named Lucas Chen, 8 years old, taken from a group home in Sacramento 2 months ago. Every lead went cold. Every safe house they hit was abandoned. Every operative they caught knew nothing about Lucas, until Havoc found the pattern. They were in the Denver FBI field office, Marcus staring at a wall of maps and photos and red string connecting locations, when the dog did something strange. He walked up to the wall and sat in front of one specific photograph. Alert position. It was a surveillance photo from a San Francisco airport, taken 4 days ago. Crowds of people. Marcus had looked at this photo a dozen times and seen nothing. What is it, boy? Marcus asked, standing next to the dog. What do you see? Torres came over, squinting at the photo. What's he alerting to? Marcus looked closer, and then he saw it. In the background, almost lost in the crowd, a small figure, a boy in a blue jacket, holding the hand of a woman whose face was turned away from the camera. That's him, Marcus breathed. That's Lucas. They enhanced the image, pulling details from the pixels. The boy's face was visible, just barely. Facial recognition confirmed it with 92% certainty. Lucas Chen, and the timestamp put him at San Francisco International 4 days ago. He made a delivery, Torres said, her voice tight. 4 days ago. Which means he's either been moved to a new location, or they've disposed of him, Marcus finished. The words tasted like poison. We need to find where that woman took him after the airport. They pulled security footage from every camera at SFO, tracking the woman and the boy through the terminal. They saw them board a regional flight to Reno. From there, the trail went cold again. No rental cars in her name, no hotel bookings, nothing, but they had her face. Crystal clear, from a dozen different angles. They ran it through every database the FBI had access to, and they got a hit. Svetlana Morozov, former FSB, the Russian Federal Security Service, specialized in wet work and asset elimination. If Lucas was with her, he was in immediate danger. People like Morozov didn't keep loose ends alive once they'd served their purpose. Reno PD has been alerted, Torres said, coordinating with her team. Every hotel, every rental property, every known Russian expatriate community in the area is being canvassed. But it's a big area, and if she's gone to ground. She hasn't, Marcus said, studying the map. Look at the pattern. Every handler, every safe house, they've all been within 10 miles of a major transportation hub. They need quick access to airports or train stations for extractions. Morozov will be close to Reno Tahoe International, probably in a short-term rental, something paid in cash, nothing traceable. That's still a lot of ground to cover, Torres said, and we don't have time. If she even suspects we're closing in, she'll kill the boy and vanish. Marcus looked at Havoc. The dog looked back at him with those amber eyes that had seen too much and saved too many. We have something better than time, Marcus said. We have the best tracker in the world. They flew to Reno that night. Torres had arranged for a team, but Marcus insisted on keeping it small. Too many officers, too much official presence, and Morozov would bolt. It was Marcus, Torres, 2 other agents, and Havoc. They started at the airport, at the exact spot where security footage showed Morozov and Lucas exiting to ground transportation. Havoc worked the area, pulling scents from the air, from the ground, from the invisible trail that every human leaves behind. And he found it. 4 days old, faint, nearly obliterated by thousands of other people passing through the same space. But it was there. Havoc led them out of the airport, into the sprawling parking lots, to a spot where a rental car had been parked. The trail ended there, but they had a direction. East, toward the city. They drove slowly, windows down, Havoc's head out the window, nose working. It seemed impossible. Finding a 4-day-old scent trail through an urban environment, through car exhaust and industrial smells, and the overlapping signatures of 100,000 people. But Havoc wasn't following a normal scent trail. He was following something specific, something the FBI lab had identified from Sophia's blood work and from samples taken from the other rescued children. The sedative patches left a chemical signature, a metabolite that the body excreted through sweat and breath. It was that signature that Havoc had alerted to at the airport, and it was that signature he was tracking now. They drove for 40 minutes, working through neighborhoods, doubling back, following the dog's instincts. And then, in a quiet residential area near a golf course, Havoc barked. They were outside a small, single-story ranch house with a for rent sign in the yard. The windows were dark, the curtains drawn. It looked empty, abandoned. But Havoc was pulling toward it with that same desperate urgency he'd shown at Denver International. Torres made the call. We go in quiet. No lights, no sirens. If she's in there, and she knows we're coming, the boy is dead. They approached on foot, spreading out to cover all exits. Marcus and Havoc took the front door, Torres the back. The other 2 agents positioned themselves at the side windows. Marcus tried the door, locked. He gave Havoc the silent command for threat assessment. The dog pressed his nose to the door crack, sniffing, and his body went rigid. Someone was inside, multiple someones. Marcus made the decision in a heartbeat. He stepped back and kicked the door, just like he'd done in Denver, and went in fast with his weapon up and Havoc at his side. The house was dark, silent. A living room with cheap rental furniture, a kitchenette, a hallway leading to bedrooms. The smell hit him immediately. Chemical, sharp, the same smell from Sophia's sedative patch. Havoc moved down the hallway, and Marcus followed, his heart pounding. The first bedroom was empty, the second was empty. The third, the door was closed. Havoc scratched at it, whining, that high-pitched sound of distress. Marcus opened the door. Lucas Chen was lying on a bare mattress on the floor, unconscious or sedated, his small chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. He was alone. The room was otherwise empty. Clear, Marcus called, holstering his weapon and dropping to his knees beside the boy. I need medical. Kid's unresponsive. Torres was there in seconds. already on her radio, calling for paramedics. The other agents cleared the rest of the house. Morozov was gone. Fled, probably hours ago, leaving Lucas behind like trash. Maybe she'd been spooked. Maybe she'd gotten extraction orders. It didn't matter. Lucas was alive. Marcus carefully peeled back the boy's collar and found what he expected. A sedative patch, the third he'd seen in as many weeks. He removed it gently, knowing the boy would need medical supervision as the drugs left his system, knowing there would be withdrawal, confusion, fear. But he was alive, and he was safe. And Havoc had found him, impossible as it seemed, through a city of 500,000 people, following a trail that shouldn't have existed. The dog sat beside the mattress, his job done, and licked the boy's hand once, gently. 6 weeks after the incident at Denver International Airport, Marcus Cole stood in a different terminal, in a different city, watching crowds of people board planes, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace, exactly, but purpose. Sofia Martinez was in a specialized foster home now, working with therapists, slowly rebuilding a childhood that had been stolen from her. The other 3 rescued children were in similar situations, healing, remembering, learning to trust again. Lucas Chen was with his grandmother in San Francisco, awake and talking, and starting to smile again. The Russian network was broken. 17 arrests across 5 states, multiple caches of fentanyl seized, enough to kill 50,000 people. Target lists and operational plans sent up the chain to Homeland Security and the National Counterterrorism Center. The threat was neutralized, but not eliminated, because there were other networks, other handlers, other Katrinas and Morozovs, who saw children as tools and America as a target. Agent Torres had offered Marcus a permanent position with the FBI's Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force, a job that would use both his military skills and Havoc's unique abilities to find kids that others couldn't. He'd accepted. Havoc sat beside him now, wearing his tactical vest, watching the crowds with those intelligent amber eyes. He was 7 years old, middle-aged for a working dog, but he showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, he seemed more focused than ever, like he'd found his true calling. "You know what's crazy," Torres said, coming up beside them with 2 cups of coffee. "The TSA has already implemented new protocols because of what happened. Random bag checks, even after security. Increased K9 patrols in terminals. Enhanced screening for solo adult travelers with children. Your dog didn't just save 4 kids and prevent a terrorist attack. He changed the entire security posture of American aviation." Marcus took the coffee, watching a family pass by. Parents, 2 kids, laughing about something. Normal, safe, unaware of how close they'd come to a very different reality. "It wasn't just Havoc," Marcus said quietly. "It was everyone. You, your team, local PD, TSA, the people who reported suspicious behavior, the Lyft driver who remembered his passenger. Everyone did their part. But it started with a dog who refused to follow a command," Torres countered. "A dog who knew something was wrong when all the humans saw was a little girl with a unicorn backpack. That's what saved everyone. Instinct, trust, the bond between a handler and his K9. She was right. If Marcus had overridden Havoc's alert, if he'd followed protocol and assumed the system was infallible, if he'd trusted the TSA screening over his dog's nose, 300 people would have died at 30,000 feet. 4 children would be dead in unmarked graves. And a terrorist network would still be operational, still planning, still using the most vulnerable among us as weapons." Marcus looked down at Havoc and scratched behind his ears. "Good boy," he said softly. "Best boy." Havoc's tail thumped once against the floor. He wasn't looking at Marcus. His eyes were on the crowds, watching, waiting, ready. Because there would be another threat, another child in danger, another moment when a dog's instincts would be the thin line between safety and catastrophe. And when that moment came, Havoc would be ready. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the invisible wars being fought in plain sight, do us a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who loves dogs, who respects the bond between handlers and their K9 partners, who understands that sometimes the greatest heroes have 4 legs and a cold nose. And here's what we want you to think about. How many times do we ignore our instincts because protocol says we're wrong? How many times do we trust the system over the voice in our heads that says something isn't right? Marcus trusted his dog over everything else. His training, the rules, common sense, and that trust saved hundreds of lives. Leave us a comment. Tell us about a time you trusted your instinct over the rules. Tell us if you've been blessed by a dog, by a partner, by someone who saw what others missed. Tell us where you're watching from, because we want to know this message is reaching people, that stories like this matter. And if you believe that there are guardians among us, both human and canine, protecting us from threats we never see, type Amen in the comments. Let us know you believe in the power of loyalty, instinct, and the unbreakable bond between a soldier and his dog. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories about courage, about faith, about the moments when one decision changes everything. Because there are thousands of Marcus Coles and Havocs out there, working in airports and train stations and border crossings, keeping us safe while we go about our normal lives. They don't ask for recognition. They don't need headlines. They just need us to remember that they're there, watching, protecting, trusting their training and their instincts, and each other. And sometimes, when you're boarding a plane or walking through a terminal, if you see a handler with a K9, take a second, thank them. Not just with words, but with your awareness. Pay attention to your surroundings. Report things that don't feel right. Be part of the network of vigilance that keeps all of us safe. Because on that Tuesday afternoon in Denver, a dog barked at a little girl, and everything changed. The bark that saved 300 lives. The instinct that trusted over protocol. The bond that refused to be broken. That's the story. That's the truth. That's the reminder that sometimes, the most important voice isn't the one giving orders. It's the one that can't speak at all. It's the bark that says, stop, look, something's wrong. Listen to it. God bless the handlers. God bless the K9S. God bless the children who survived. And God bless all of you for listening, for caring, for being part of a community that believes in protecting the innocent. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and never, ever ignore the dog. Amen.